Hi guys, well as you can see I've got the Woolich Racing harness in front of me. I'm about to start to fit it to my Z1000. Looks fairly straightforward, however the instructions are set on a different bike to the bike that I'm fitting the wiring harness, so they're just a guide basically. So what we've got first of all is the wiring harness, which allows you to fit the little log box, which is the piece of equipment that you need if you want to rewrite your ECU or read any information on your ECU, is this little guy. So that's the log box, and then we've got the wiring harness that you need to fit to the bike to allow you to obviously plug in the log box. And there's also another piece of the wiring harness here. This fits onto this plug here, and then the other end goes into the main harness that your ECU connects to. Ports that are not currently being used that you have to take the rubber bungs out of and fit that in, and that allows you then to use the log box. Also, as well as the log box to be fitted to the bike, is the O2 sensor, the Wideband O2 sensor. So that's the actual metering unit, the electronics, so to speak. So we've got that, the actual CO2 sensor, which goes into the exhaust, and then obviously that plugs into the new harness, which also I've got here. So we've got to fit that as well. And there's also a data port, which is a double one in this case, so that obviously you can connect the O2 sensor to the log box. And also I've purchased a gauge, so I can actually see. This doesn't actually come with the O2 wideband sensor kit. All you get is the wiring, the sensor and the metering box. The gauge is a separate item to purchase, but I want to do it so I can get the tuning on the fly as I'm sort of riding it. I can read, see what's going on, and then obviously compare that with the data that the log box has got, and hopefully give me more an accurate tune on the bike. We've also got an installation kit that comes with the O2 wideband sensor. Fortunately, some of the parts have got taken out of the original bags, because I bought this kit when I was in the UK and now I'm out in Thailand. Obviously I brought them over with me, and when I've packed them away I've obviously had to take bits and pieces out of different bags and boxes, and unfortunately the bag that this come in has gone missing, so I'm not exactly sure. It will only fit into this metering unit, so I'm presuming it goes with this. However, looking at the instructions, I'm not sure whether this part, in fact these pieces have been done away with now and you only need this part. Until I come to fit it and see whether the unit powers up, I won't exactly know. If I can't get no power, then I'm going to need to speak to Woolich Racing, because on the installation guide it shows different coloured wires to the wires that I have. Obviously the black is negative, the red is positive, but the purple and the white, they don't show at all. So I need to find out how that wire's in. Well, I'm just about to start fitting the wiring harness now on the bike. We're going to take the seat out. First job, to release the seat, we're going to have to find the ECU on the bike. I do know already where it is, so we'll get that taken apart, get to the ECU, and then we're going to have a look at what we need to do. Okay, we're going to need to take off the side pieces on the bike to just make access a little bit easier to it. It's quite a straightforward job. Just a few torque screws holding the side panels on. Okay, then what we need to do is take this top cover off. The ECUs are mounted underneath this cover, so we're going to remove this cover now. Okay, and again you just need to wiggle this cover out. There we go. Okay, move that to the side, and there are the ECUs, or the ECU should I say. Now one of these ports I'm already using because I've got a gear indicator now fitted to the bike, which I'm going to have to disconnect whilst I'm using the Woolich Log Box, because that also uses this same port. Okay, let's have a look at my next step now. We've got to remove this black plug according to the instructions at the back of the ECU. Okay, and then I can see that there are some rubber bungs in the back of the ECU which have got to be removed. Let me just get my other camera and I can show that a little bit clearer. Okay, what we've got is, if you can see right in there, there are like little stops in the back which are not being used, and that's where you have to put the wiring harness, so those have to be removed, and then obviously the wiring harness goes into that part. Okay, what I'm actually doing is taking these blanking pins out with a small pointed, very pointed pair of tweezers, which luckily enough I've got, and they seem to be working really well. I did hear a very faint click, and it does say on the instructions you should hear a very faint click if it's seated, and it seems to be in there, so obviously I've put it in the right way around. In. Now looking at the way these are going in, I feel that this piece is going to have to stay on the bike. I can't see these coming out very easy, to be honest, and trying to take these in and out, I think they'll get damaged. So that's that part done. What I will do is retape that once I know it's all working okay. And the instructions say to plug that back in now, so that's that part done. So we've got one piece of the harness in. Okay, that plug to go in there, which is nice and easy. Okay, and the other piece goes into the plug that I'm currently using for my gear indicator. Does seem to be quite a bit of movement backwards and forwards on that, but hopefully that should be installed now. What we need to do now is put everything back, just leaving access to the wiring. Well, basically I fitted the log box now in, and as I said, I was going to put some Velcro on the back of the log box and also where my toolkit goes. I've just put a piece there, removed the toolkit for now, so that just Velcros on there, and that will hold it nice and steady to allow me to reflash the ECU. When I'm not using it, I'll just disconnect this wire and take the log box out. So that's a nice little fit there. I'm also going to mount the Wideband O2 sensor metering unit in the back here, next to the log box hopefully. Okay, I'm going to have a look at that next now. Gone a little bit further forward from when I just left off. I've fitted the O2 wideband sensor, run all the harness all the way up the bike and to the back. I've gone ahead, fitted the metering unit, and also the Woolich Racing Log Box now is in place. I found the problem with the relay, with the wiring kit should I say. I'd got a little bit confused when I'd brought it over from the UK. Obviously things had got moved around, and the spare harness was actually, it's all part of the same kit, so managed to work that out. Fitted it all in, fitted the relay. The instructions are quite clear on how to fit it in, quite straightforward. I have quickly tested it and everything appears to be working as it should. I've managed to locate the two boxes under the seat part, obviously minus the tool kit, and I store a little lock under there, but that can be out while I'm using it and tuning the bike. Once I've tuned the bike, got the maps flashed across, and I'm happy with everything, hopefully I can then take most of this out. I've also now fitted the gauge to the bike, which is the AFR gauge, air to fuel ratio. Disconnected my gear indicator at the moment because that plugs into the same box, unfortunately, as the log box of Woolich, but that's okay. I've run the cable underneath around this bracket. This bracket was originally bought to hold the camera, but I did in my last video mention that the vibration was very bad on this bracket, so I've modified it now to hold the gauge, and that works really well. Run the cable round and underneath this cover, down the bottom, comes out at the bottom, loops underneath and feeds nice and tidy up there. And then just leave the cable in place, and I can tuck this out the way when I'm not using the gauge. I'll now switch the ignition on. You can see the gauge booting up. Should come up. There we go, and we've got the gauge working. Also, you can see that the box, the Woolich Racing, is also flashing. We've got power to it, and everything's as it should be. So hopefully everything's working fine. I did try, and I have started it since I fitted it. I just boot it up again, make sure everything's working, because I'd moved the switch over. I just noticed, yep, that's gone into the read write mode. Okay, that seems to be working okay, so I can now start the bike. Okay, as you can see, the bike starts and runs. I haven't driven it anywhere, I've not connected to the computer yet. I'm going to have a quick flick through the instructions on setting up for the computer. I know you've got to set it up with some USB drivers, etc. So that's where we've got to now.